Morning, everybody. Welcome to the February 16, 2021 business meeting of the Raleigh Historic Development Commission. I'll ask the staff to call the roll.
Nick Fountain.
Here.
Kay Webb.
Here.
Katie Pate.
Here.
Travis Bailey. Ian Dunn.
Here.
Vershay Height.
Here.
Heather Leah.
Here.
Harold Millette is excused. Janine McAuliffe.
Here.
John Reese.
I saw his lips move.
I see John.
I see him. There you go.
Okay. Well,
Here.
oh, I think I heard that.
Okay.
Susan Singer.
Here.
Gaston Williams.
Here.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, everybody. So we'll move right on here, and I'll tell you before we get there that I have a hearing at 8:30 that's a live hearing, so I'll have to drop off about 10 or 15 after to get to that, and our esteemed Vice Chair Kay Webb will take over from there, and she tells me she also has a 9 o'clock appointment. So this is going to look like one of those plays in football where they lateral the ball to 6 different people trying to get to the end zone. So I'll entertain a motion to approve the agenda unless somebody has changes. All right, that's great. So we've got a motion from Janine McAuliffe to approve the agenda, a second from, boy, my memory's not working worth a darn today, but Vershay Height seconds the motion. Any discussion? All in favor say aye. Raise your right hand. All right, all hands are up, and I vote aye as well. So you all should have had a chance to approve the minutes or to review the minutes from the January 19th meeting. I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes unless you all see a correction that needs to be made. Janine McAuliffe moves to approve the minutes. John Reese seconds the motion. Discussion. All in favor say aye and raise your right hand. Okay, thank you. Thank you. That carries. And so now the first action item is the rezoning case of 501-711-13 South Bloodworth. That's case number Z48-20. That's with the 4 houses y'all may remember. I hope you had a chance to look at the staff's revised comments. And I'll call on Colette to review what's happened since our last meeting and where are we now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Colette. So Nick kind of just gave you a little bit of a refresher, but at the December 15th meeting, you last heard this request. And at that meeting, you voted to recommend approval, provided that the applicants add conditions that meet the character of your discussion. And you also noted that once those conditions were finalized and added to the case, that the rezoning be brought back for a final vote. So that's what we're doing here. The applicant has provided conditions, and we also briefly discussed them in a staff memo, which I hope you all saw. But there are 3 conditions, one related to materials, one about documentation, and one about making the houses available for relocation or salvage before demolition. And these conditions do apply to the 501, 507, and 511 South Bloodworth properties. 513 was that house that had been relocated or built in about 2008.
Okay, thank you for that, Colette. Colette, while you have the mic, would you just outline quickly what the conditions were that staff referenced in the memo? Most everybody has that in front of them, but just in case, let's be sure everybody's on the same page.
So just to clarify, the conditions that staff had comments on, or the conditions in general?
the comments and possible conditions that you referenced in the staff memo.
Sure. So staff's comments were that the proposed conditions do overall largely represent the conditions that were supported by you at the December 15th discussion. Some of staff comments, the first condition lists many materials for the facade of new construction. It lists brick, stone, concrete, masonry, cementitious siding, wood, metal, terracotta, and or glass. And staff's comment was that brick, stone, concrete, masonry, and wood are all commonly found in the district, but metal, terracotta, and glass as a full facade is not commonly found in the district. They are employed, not terracotta. And when appropriate, the commission has previously supported the use of cementitious siding for new construction and additions to historic properties. We also suggest that a potential condition that could increase compatibility of new construction might address the fenestration or height or roof form of any proposed structure or address articulation of the facade. And staff also suggested that dimension drawings be added as a method of recordation in addition to photographs.
All right, thank you, Colette. And at this time, I'll ask Tom Johnson or Robbie Lawson, would they like to comment on any of this before we turn to discussion and take action here?
This is Tom Johnson. We basically, in talking to Colette and Ira Mabel, came up with these conditions. They were consistent with conditions that had been used previously in the warehouse district, which is another historic district in the city. And that's how we came up with these conditions, which, as is stated in the memo, are largely consistent with what the commission had recommended at the previous meeting. So I'm happy to answer, as is Robbie Lawson, happy to answer any questions you may have. We didn't get into like specifics of the design because it's just so hard. There's really no method to decide whether they meet the requirements or not. It becomes very subjective, but the materials that we listed and that condition we used was consistent with one we found that had been used in the warehouse district, and that's why we used that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. So Tom, when Colette went through that a moment ago, she added a phrase in the context-sensitive design piece as she went through that, where she suggested that metal, terracotta, and or glass are not typical materials as a full facade in the district. Do you have reaction to the notion of deleting those with, as long as it says as a full facade?
I'll defer to Robbie a little bit on that. If it's a full facade, that's fine, but I could see obviously metal and glass would be used as a portion of the facade, but Robbie, I'll let you comment on that one.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm probably fine with that. I mean, it's not going to look like the PNC Tower or anything like that. I mean, I want it to look like townhomes. So a full metal or glass facade is not the design that we're looking for. There definitely will be glass windows, of course, and didn't want to restrict that. But it's not going to be, all glass or all metal.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. I'll turn to discussion within the commission. And if you'll let me know if you want to speak, raise your hand or whatever, and I will. So Gaston Williams.
Just quick, make sure staff and Tom maybe comment in here. I read on page 1 and 2 the paragraphs 1 through 3 going on to page 2, and those are the conditions that were offered by the applicant. And staff's comment says, okay with those, but we'd like these additional supplements to those conditions. That's the way I read this, and those are the contextual sensitive design and other bullet mitigating. Is that the way I should read this? And is the second question, if I'm right on that, is the applicant and his client willing to adapt those conditions as a part of the package, subject to the chairman's one modification?
Well, I think the answer to that is that staff was putting these out here as possible modifications to the conditions that were offered. And I understand that the conditions offered have been modified since our last meeting to try to meet our concerns. And this is just, so I think these are tweaks to the conditions that could be added or could be offered. Is there further discussion? John Reese?
I noted in the report from staff about additional recommendations, that being the potential to increase the compatibility of new construction might address the fenestration, height, roof form, and proposed structures. I'd like to comment on that relative to window fenestrations being of a vertical proportion rather than long horizontals. In addition, is there any other discussion from other folks about height and roof form?
Okay, anyone else want to respond to John? All right, no reaction there. What about this idea, folks? Verche, you want to comment, please?
Yeah, I guess it's maybe more of a question. So when this goes through to the process, when we start to see what it looks like, is there an opportunity to make comment at that point, or this is kind of our opportunity to be preemptive about what their approach is going to be?
Well, I think where we are on it is that they have an application to rezone. We indicated that we would likely support it if we met these concerns. They've now given us these conditions in their effort to meet our concerns. And so I guess my thought is, if we're going to adjust their comments or suggest we vote to support it, provided that this language is slightly modified, and we probably want to be pretty specific about what that is, then we'd go ahead and vote to approve it. I think that's how we would want to proceed here.
So I guess for John then, with your comment about the roof lines, are you thinking that the language might be too vague, or?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
So John's making a comment about the roof line and the way that it's written as far as compatibility, but I think he was alluding to the fact that the language for that as written might be a little bit too vague, and we maybe should be more specific as far as what compatibility means with regard to the roof lines in this area.
Let me see if I can, let's see. Heather, you had your hand up a moment ago.
Yes, I have one. I remember we had discussed at the last meeting, and I don't see it on here. And so I have a couple of questions about it. It discussed possibly using companies as much as possible that were, minority-owned companies, or, letting as much as possible minority communities and African-American communities benefit from this, by hiring them to be involved. And I don't see that on here. And I was just curious, is that still something that is being considered? Is it not something that we are allowed to ask for?
Tanya Tully here. May I address a little bit, Nick?
Yes, ma'am.
I just wanted to comment that this item did come up at the Planning Commission, I think 2 meetings ago, and the Planning Commission did want to hear the vote from today's meeting with RHDC, very interested in hearing what they say. There were some questions about why you were reviewing it, and so we had to remind them of, the process of where RHDC fits in. I'm not suggesting that that is a bad suggestion, Heather, but I would like to make sure that the commission remains focused on what your mission is, so that any guidance you provide, the more relevant it is to your mission, I think the greater weight it will hold as suggestions move forward.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Tanya. Heather, something else?
Yes, thank you, Tanya. It is, I know we had talked about the fact that we would have the ability to keep the houses, to move the houses to city property. And I know I've found out since then that we're probably not going to be doing anything like that. We're not going to be keeping the houses or moving them. So given that the only option we have is to kind of record them and document them, I see here that they're allowing any nonprofit entry and museums and people to go in and get artifacts and things. How are we letting local nonprofits and maybe the museum, the city museum, know that they are able to do that? And what is the process for being able to go inside and help document and get photos?
I'm Tanya Tully here again. I'm going to let Colette answer part. I will answer the part about the recordation. That expense would be held by the applicant. They would be taking the photographs. They would be doing any drawings. They would be writing it up, and they would be submitting it to preservation staff. And for approval is typically how it works. And once preservation staff gives it the check off, then they can say that that condition has been met. I do not know if there have been conversations about how notification would be made about the other rezoning conditions. Perhaps Colette can answer that, or Ira.
This is Colette. The third condition states that public notice of the structure's availability and possibility for salvage would be provided to Capital Area Preservation, Preservation North Carolina, our department, the Historic Preservation Unit, and the State Historic Preservation Office for sharing as in disbursement as each of those entities see fit.
That makes sense. It could be like email. We're just going to make sure.
Sorry, I think Heather's comment was really important. And I understand that our responsibility is encased in the building and the structure and the historical perspective of that. But I also think that if the notification is done in that sense, is there some direct link to notification of minorities in the community? I mean, in this case where the structure is really changing the culture and the history of the community from its past to a current status, which, is going to happen. Is there a way we can create some notification that specifically targets minority vendors or minority salvage yards or minority builders? Just a question.
Do you have an organization in mind?
I'm glad to research organizations, but I know that we've had a conversation about this in the SPHO, and it seems to me it's the same kind of conversation. So I'm sure they've done a fair amount of looking at who would salvage. There are organizations who do. I'm glad to look it up. I'm glad to do that research if you'd like me to. I have not done it.
No, I'm just thinking that we've listed a number of organizations have been listed. If we want to add one that we think will be more effective in reaching African-American community, then I think that will be fine. But otherwise, we need to be relatively specific and with what we're doing here, because I do think we're at the place where we need to make minor adjustments and move ahead.
Okay. I'll be prepared. I'll be prepared for the next time it comes up. I'll do some research on. I'm sure church groups.
We're probably going to take action now, though. That's the only thing about it. I would like to think that Preservation North Carolina, the State Historic Preservation Office, Capital Area Preservation, that those folks are pretty well attuned to the communities who might have an interest or might be able to help, and are probably have similar concerns that are, as those have been expressed here. But if we have a particular organization that we want to get notice that we know is heavily focused in that neighborhood, then we could add that one. But I don't want to put us in a position of leaving the applicants floundering and not knowing whether whatever they've done will be satisfactory or not. I don't think that's fair to them either. Does Heather, you had something else?
Yeah, given that, we don't have any specifics, I was curious, to what extent are we allowed as commissioners to maybe reach out to leaders or within the African American community who might be able to be involved in this, just ourselves?
I think as individuals, we can reach out to anybody, tell them there's a deal available on, and a couple of those houses are worth the effort in our view. I think that's part of that. We can certainly work to get that word around individually. Right now, what we're doing is working on specifics that be included in potential conditions to this rezoning that then city staff would have to check off did it happen or not.
Nick,
Yes, Colette.
so I think in condition 3, it does include, so, the notice is not limited to just the organizations that I mentioned. It says including but not limited to. So certainly I think the applicants are willing to notice additional entities. But it also does state that for relocation or salvage, it is open to any nonprofit entity, individual, or for-profit entity. So if there was someone in the community who was interested in taking on either parts or all of these structures, that would certainly be allowable.
Okay, thank you, Colette. So folks, my thought is that we should try to craft a motion here and so that we can move forward on that. I would suggest something along this line that we'll approve it with the conditions that were offered by the applicants, with the addition that with regard to the contact sensitive design, that metal terracotta not be used as the principal, what's the word I'm looking for? Principal facade material. And then secondly, that the new construction utilize heights and roof forms consistent that are consistent with the adjacent nearby structures. Now, when I say that, I'm not saying make everything one story, but I do think that if we use an A roof and some of the other things that reference that neighborhood, or there may be other ways to do it that still get enough units to make the project viable, that we could go that way. And the other thing I would suggest that we add that the reference to dimension drawings in the other condition as referenced by staff. So I think if we could have a motion about like that, then we at least have something we can discuss and tinker with. So, Janine, are you prepared to make that motion?
I'll try to make that motion. I propose that this commission approve this application with the conditions offered, 1 through 3 in the, as defined in the staff report, and also suggesting that the addition of context-sensitive design, specifically not to have primary facades constructed of all metal, terracotta, and/or glass, and also the condition that the height and roof forms of the proposed structures are designed compatibly with the district. Also that the structures, existing structures, are documented through measured drawings as well as photographs.
A second.
Folks, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Gaston Williams seconds the motion. Now for discussion, John Reese.
I'd just like to make a friendly amendment that in addition to the context, relative to the context-sensitive design, that we include that the proposed structures be proportional in height, width, and that the elements follow through proportionally as well to the existing neighborhood.
Janine, is that motion, is that amendment acceptable to you?
I generally, yes, I would say so. I would note that this is being, the zoning is 3 stories, so I guess maybe the issue here is proportionate, right? Right. So, yes.
This is Colette. I'd just like to remind you all that for rezonings,
yes,
conditions are voluntary and offered by the applicant. So I don't know if that will change the wording of your motion, but I guess ultimately you're voting to approve pending that those conditions are added, is how it's worded currently.
Or are we saying we're recommending that? Because to Colette's point, are we able to, we're not able to require it.
No, we can't require it. And I understand it's being offered, but I thought that these amendments that we're talking about would ultimately be something that the applicants could stand and could offer and leave us a little more comfortable. That was my approach.
This is Colette again. The applicant would like to speak as well whenever you have a minute.
All right, Gaston, I'll let you speak and then I'll hear from the applicant.
As the person that seconded the motion, I agree to accept Janine's amendment and John Reese's addition to the original motion.
Okay, so then let me see. Tom Johnson, you wanted to say something?
Yes, I did. I will tell you we're okay with saying that the metal, terracotta, and/or glass will not be the predominant material of the facade. We are fine with that. We're fine with doing dimension drawings as part of the recordation prior to demolition. We're fine with that. Looking at other factors, I don't know how those become very subjective, such as the roof, the facade, and that sort of thing. Height, we need to stick with 3 feet, 3 stories, because that was our intention all along. And we're looking at rooftop terraces on these townhomes. Therefore, we can't do any type of roofing that would interfere with that. But, we considered design conditions, but who enforces them? How do people are going to have very subjective feelings on what's consistent and what's not. And so that's why we chose not to go the route of doing specifics with respect to, design. Height's going to be 3 stories. Roof form, I don't know how, we're going to have a flat roof, obviously, because we wanted to have rooftop terraces as part of this project. So, we would agree to supplement with respect to the materials and with respect to documentation. But beyond that, we just really can't, because there's not a method. And we hear you in terms of making it consistent with what's in the neighborhood. And we committed to that. But crafting a condition for that is very difficult.
All right. Thank you for that, Tom. John Reese.
I just want to clarify that proportion does not have anything, is not related to height or scale. It is related to proportion, which means that if a given study is done on the existing proportions of given structures in the neighborhood, that this new construction be related proportionally to those existing heights and structures. That doesn't mean that the height and structure is the height and the width and those kinds of things are limited. Just want to make that quite clear.
Okay. All right, I've got to go to my meeting now, so I'm going to hand the ball to Kay, but you all can be aware that I'll be supportive of the application, and I'll be okay with something like John said with regard to proportionality and the idea of using vertical windows rather than horizontal and that sort of thing, which will make the structure blend in better. Okay. Anyway, sorry I got to run, folks. Take care.
Do we have any further discussion? Verche?
I think in part what we're talking about, and maybe this is the sort of compromise between what we're discussing and what the applicant is able to offer, is in this the word compatibility. So while I understand what your references to proportion are, and not saying that it's limited or it in any way has to copy what's surrounding it, but it's really just being thoughtful and sensitive in the approach and making sure that as they're sort of striking those datums and lines and proportioning the elements of the architecture, that it remains compatible with the general building fabric of the area.
Tanya Tully here. May I speak, Kay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Another alternative, just a reminder, it is nice when the applicant is in agreement with everything you're suggesting. It does not have to be the case. You can also sort of reword the motion to say that you definitely support it for these conditions. You could say it would be a stronger application if these other items were also added. So you can sort of squish it around. So if there is something that you think is important, even if the applicant has not indicated that they are willing to do it, you can still put it in your motion so that it's going out there and the commission and city council and everyone knows that is something that you consider important.
I think, didn't we, in the motion?
Gaston.
In the motion pending that we're discussing, doesn't it assume that these staff recommendations in the paragraphs on page 2 under comments will be incorporated into the conditions that we are okay with, or not okay with, but whatever the words are, support?
This is Colette. I think I can answer that, Kay.
All right, please do.
So Gaston, the recommendations as included in the memo are, like Tanya said, recommendations to make the case stronger through the conditions, but they are not required to be added for your support.
Oh, then I misunderstood the motion. I think they should be required. I think we should support the staff's recommendation as a condition of an endorsement of this proposal. What we're doing has one little flaw in the compatibility. We're going to have flat top roofs with balconies on top of them in a neighborhood that has pitched roofs all over the place. But be that as it may, that's probably unavoidable.
So this is Colette again. Like Tanya just mentioned, you cannot require that conditions be added. So I think structuring the motion to say we support for these reasons, but it would be stronger if these suggestions were added, would fulfill that goal. Otherwise, if your other option would be to not support because those things aren't added.
Okay, Janine, did you have comment?
Thank you. Yeah, I wanted to say I would be willing to modify my motion, I think I was trying to say what we're getting to now, in that it's those three conditions that the applicant has, it seems, already agreed to. Then we have suggestions of additional conditions that we feel would make this application even stronger, which is about the, which it sounds like the applicant's already suggesting they're willing to document the properties in drawing form and with respect to the materials on the facade.
Okay, John, did you have further comment? Unmute.
Yeah, thank you. You know, because I want to take this out of the realm of subjectivity and put it in the realm of objectivity. The amendment that I'd like to kind of add in there is that it would be helpful for the applicant to do proportional studies of the existing neighborhood so that we understand what the framework is relative to proportions that are in the new design so that they are compatible with the existing neighborhood. Again, that does not require a limit of height, shape, or design. It is talking about fabric.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All right, Janine, if you would repeat your motion, please.
All right, I'm making a motion that this application, we support this application with the additional 3 conditions offered by the applicant, 1 through 3 is noted in the new staff report, and that the applicant does document in drawing form as well as photographs the existing structures before demolition, and that the materials of the new construction are not predominantly made of metal terracotta and glass. And we would support strongly that the applicant do proportional studies of the existing neighborhood fabric to ensure compatibility with the district.
Okay, thank you. And can we have an additional second for that, please? Okay. Several people have done that. Susan Singer, seconds. Okay, is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, because we have 2 opposed, and I will vote in favor. So it appears that the motion carries. All right, thank you. And thank you to our guests who commented on this. Thank you very much. All right, the next item is demolition by neglect, 419 North Person Street. We have a report from Nick and John Reese. And since John Reese is currently still here, we will hear from you, please.
Yeah, Nick and I were able to get over to the Person Street place last week. I think in the report you'll see that while the documentation of certain areas of neglect are relevant, we did meet with the contractor, and they were on site at the time actually doing the work that needed to be started to kind of keep the thing moving along. And from that discussion, we realized that this is a scenario where, while staff and everyone else involved with the project of monitoring it should keep monitoring it, we felt like it was a scenario where they were trying to do the right thing, and they were getting on it, and they were going forward.
Okay. Tanya, what are our options here?
Hi, Kay, Tanya here. You have a couple of options. Well, the first thing is, after doing the report, if you follow your procedures, you do need to, whatever you decide today, let the Society for the Preservation of Historic Oakwood know, that you made the report, and this is what's going on. You can choose today to vote on whether or not you believe the house is undergoing demolition by neglect. Doing that, staff would then prepare a petition to the proper department, which right now is in Housing and Neighborhoods, to officially start the process. You could choose to delay that for a month and see if work is actually continuing. And then vote, next month. It's really up to you. After a petition is made from RHDC to the proper staff in Housing and Neighborhoods, they would then, schedule a meeting with the property owners. So it would still be a couple of months down the line. So it's kind of up to you. By moving along, it's the whole point of the demolition by neglect process is to, save the house, but it's an official push to get people to continue to fix their properties. Did that answer your question?
Yes. Janine?
Thank you. I wanted to make a comment. I saw in one of the documents about this case that there was a note about PNC had commented that they had been told repairs would be underway before, which were not executed. So I'm definitely supporting the idea of waiting a month to see whether this progress continues.
Is there any further discussion? John?
Yeah, I agree with Janine. I think it would be just something that we look at it next month as well. I do know, and it's noted in the report, that because Person Street is under the realm of NCDOT, and having experience with NCDOT trying to get a pedestrian crossing simply because they've got to get a gas line into the property, that I must say is a very arduous and difficult process just to get something like that done. And so that does kind of keep them on a very rough schedule of trying to get something produced on that front. But I do agree with Janine. I think as long as there is monitoring of the situation and that work continues, I think that that's probably the best way to go.
Tanya Tully here.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So when you decide, please do make a vote that you're going to defer it if that is the case you're going to make. I would simply like to add that repairing wood and roofing doesn't require gas. So what we're really talking about is getting the envelope secure, not getting it into a move-in ready condition. So just if you're going to continue to monitor it. The other point is that if you, and I'm not suggesting that you vote to send the petition, but if you do, if you do decide to actually make an official petition, then monitoring would all continue to happen, with preservation staff and the staff with the Housing and Neighborhoods.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, Susan Singer.
I'd like to table it for a month too. I think there's a lot of people in this community, the SPHO area, paying attention. So let's stay on top of watching and seeing what's going on.
All right, would you like to make a motion to that effect, please?
Sure. I may not do it as legitimately as the architects would, but I'd like to make a motion to postpone our decision until our next month and watch the progress of demolition during this period.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, Verche. All right, any further discussion? Gaston?
I think, and ask staff to specifically notify the owner that we're continuing to monitor it for another month so that they'll realize we haven't just forgotten about them.
All right. All those in favor, raise your hand. All those opposed? Okay, I will vote in favor, so that appears that it's unanimous. All right, thank you. Annual retreat follow-up. Staff.
Hi, Tanya here again. And I just looked at what I wrote, and I do not have a draft work plan based on your discussion. My apologies for that. I am prepared to have a conversation about the website. Community Awareness Committee did discuss it at their last meeting, and I believe they have a motion to bring forward. So I don't know if Heather, you wanted to, I know I just put you on the spot. If you wanted to just to talk about what was discussed regarding the website, just as generally speaking, as you all recall, the primary topic of discussion you had during the retreat was community engagement in its many forms, and that the state of the website seemed to have a very big, a high priority as part of that.
And we even talked about, with our upcoming event and giving out branded items, wanting to have the website on there, which we decided to do, even though, the website is not in its best state. Ultimately, I mean, I think we all know it would be ideal. One, keep our current, web address, because that's what, but then two, update it and make it something that we could regularly update, something that we could make more user friendly and more designed, more nicely designed, but I'm not sure about the affordability of that. And I know we had talked about letting it be attached to the city of their redesign as well. But I'm not sure if we discussed if that would actually change the address or our ability to update it. So.
Right, Tanya here again. I realized I didn't clarify. So the primary concern with the website right now is that its security certificate is broken or non-existent. So not everybody can actually access the website. It depends on which browser you're at and whether you've upgraded and the phase of the moon, as far as I can tell. So the question that has, and so there's a big conversation about how to redesign it. Is it going to be something that RHDC wants to own? Do you want to bring everything in under the, the city website umbrella? But the big question staff has is, do you want to spend a little bit of money now to fix the certificate so people can access what's there now, and then have the conversation about what the next big step is going to be? Or do you want to start having the conversation about the next big step and hope that the website doesn't completely break in the next several months? And as you can tell, I have a really strong opinion about that.
Yeah, and I'll add there too, for those of you who aren't aware, we're actually planning like a scavenger hunt type thing for community awareness. Since we're going to have our website on that, something to consider when we think about how quickly we want to make the website usable. Because obviously, if we don't upgrade the security certificate, then sending out branded stuff with our website on it to hundreds of people might backfire a little bit if we don't go ahead and get that taken care of soon. However, it is a cost that ultimately it would be nice if we could roll that whole cost into a new website but I'm not sure that we can do that quickly enough.
Gaston?
But Heather, I was under the impression we already decided to recommend the patch, and then we proceed to develop it, recognizing that development of a new platform and location is going to require some time and a delay. We couldn't afford not to have the patch. We were going,
Yeah,
and since it comes from a committee, it doesn't require a motion.
It requires a motion, it doesn't require a second.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, but we discussed within the committee, we decided that the patch was ideal, but we, of course, needed to bring it to the larger group.
All right, so you wish to make that motion, please?
Sure, making a
Heather.
motion. I make a motion to go ahead and use some of our money to put a patch on the website so that people can access it.
All right, since this is coming from the Community Awareness Committee, a second is not required. Is there any further discussion? Do you have any information about the possible cost of a patch?
Yes, Tanya here. It will
All right.
be roughly $750.
Oh, okay. All right, is there any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. All those opposed? All right, it appears to be unanimous and the motion carries. Okay, anything else from the retreat?
No, ma'am.
Tanya?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, we're down to committee reports and nominations committee. We are still in the process of soliciting persons for interest in service. An advertisement went out last week before last, and so those persons have until March the 9th to submit interest. So if you have any people that you think would be good, please encourage them to follow the process. And once again, we are looking for persons who live in a historic property or district, and also someone who has skills that will be useful on COA. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. We will move to the research committee. Ian?
Hi, everybody. We are in the beginning stages of several items, most of which I will have more for you next month. But briefly, the Leitner Brothers study, still working on that. African American Resources Survey, we're working on a scope and a focus for that. The Rogers-Danley, the Shaw University has requested to change the name of the Rogers Bagley Daniels Pegues House, which is that Greek Revival House at 125 East South Street. They want to take off the Daniels name, that's what they said, but they also said they wanted to rename it the Pegues House. So we are seeking further clarification on what happens to the Rogers and Bagleys in the name. As I said, we'll have more on that next month. I've been working on the potential landmarks list, filling it out, correcting mistakes, and we are prepared to send, next month we'll be prepared to send a handful of letters to property owners, letting them know that they are on the potential landmarks list, and we'd like to landmark the property. So that's what I have.
Okay. Are there any questions for research? All right, Heather, is there anything else from community awareness?
We just a brief update for our scavenger hunt, our foodie and history scavenger hunt. We are moving forward, and we have some businesses that are already signed up to help. Thank you, Gaston, for that. And we're just continuing to move forward.
Okay, and is there anyone here who can give a Lustron House report?
I think that's me, Kay. Tanya.
Okay.
Here. And were you at the meeting, Gaston? I've also lost track. Okay. Why don't you want to report instead of staff?
No, you go ahead, please.
Okay. So we are working on trying to get this property sold. The update is we continue to have potential interest. There is a knock on wood, a serious purchaser. If regardless or not, we are moving forward at looking at putting up the walls on the house, whether for this potential purchaser or just as a way to help make it a more saleable property. So we are slowly moving through that decision-making process. We're going to meet again in another week or two to see where that is and make another decision. In more specific news, the parts storage will be relocated to the property on Wednesday. So they have been stored off-site for some time. So they will be brought forward, and there will be a storage container placed on the property with the parts stored inside. And I do encourage anybody who's out and about driving to just sort of continue to drive by and monitor the property. Ian and Nick went out a couple weekends ago and dragged away a waterlogged carpet off of the property. So we want to, both for the saleability and also for, to be good neighbors, make sure that we are keeping the site clean and clear.
Okay, thank you. Any questions, further discussion? All right. The next would be the Certificate of Appropriateness Committee. And I am going to have to jump off, so I am going to turn it over to Katie, who is our next officer left standing. All right.
Everyone.
Thank you. All right.
Thanks, Kay. Do we have anything on COA that is up for discussion today? Okay, great. On Dix Park Committee, anything there? Does anyone have an update?
Hey, Katie, this is Erin. So we last met in December. Our next meeting is going to be tomorrow afternoon. And there's not much to report here. We're just monitoring the progress of phase 1 over on the Lake Wheeler side of things. The Plaza and Play phase is underway for design. And Grayson Mahan, who is a parks planner with the city, is coming to give an update on that design and how it relates to specifically to the historic context over there. So we'll have something to report next month based on how that meeting goes.
Okay, great. Thanks, Erin. Does anyone have any additional comment on that? Okay, sounds good. And then I saw that we have added in a new public comment section to the agenda. Do we have anyone signed up to give public comment today?
No.
Okay, great. I'm glad we added that, though. Just a personal note. Look forward to hearing the public speak. And then next, reports of commissioners. Do we have anyone who would like to give a report today? Right, sounds good. And then I see that we do have a note under the report of staff.
Hi, Tanya here. This went out in your email, but I will just say as a reminder, the City of Raleigh Office of Equity and and Inclusion has created a boards and commissions racial equity training survey, and the link was provided to you in the agenda email. I encourage you all to please complete it. Deadline is February 28th. Staff will also be completing it. All the boards and commissions in the city have been invited, so please do so, and we will at some point have some training.
Great. Thank you, Tanya. Does anyone have any comment on that? Okay, great. So that looks like that was the last item. Is there anything I gleaned over today that we need to discuss before adjourning? Oh, John Reese.
I just have one question, and unrelated to anything. Tanya, do you know what the process is to start a demolition by neglect when there's no CAC and no neighborhood association for a given historic district?
Yes, that you, an interested party would need to just let staff know, and then we would reach out to RHDC, and y'all would decide if you want to start with that letter the same way a neighborhood would do.
Roche Height.
Yeah, I have also kind of a quick question regarding the documentation of structures before they're demolished or moved. I know that's primarily been on the responsibility and the resources of the applicant. As far as the actual content, and maybe this is the architect and me talking, but the actual content that comes out of that, as far as the quality of the photography, the level of detail and things with documentation, has that been largely successful, or is there a need to potentially engage, even whether it's like a university or something like that, that can make sure that we're getting the information that we need before these things don't exist anymore, that the pictures aren't kind of wobbly and various things like that. So I wanted to just put the question out there. It may already be good, but I just wanted to ask.
Tanya here. It depends. There is, I guess fortunately we haven't had to do this terribly often. It depends on the applicant. Sometimes it's super easy and we get what we need. Other times there's a lot of back and forth with the applicant where they submit something and staff says, no, try again. The photos have not been as tricky as the drawings have been. It is certainly, I think if we could come up with a collaboration with the university, and something that would be sustainable from year to year, to have folks on call to be able to work with an applicant on that. I think that would be a great idea, because it also tends to depend on the sophistication and financial capacity of a particular applicant as well. So,
Janine.
Thank you. I have two comments on that. One is I wonder if there might be, in certain circumstances, since we can't always require these conditions of documentation to occur, if there may be times where we would need to step in and make sure that that happens.
Tanya again, I think that's a great idea. So if a rezoning application goes forward and the documentation does not officially become a condition, you absolutely could choose to do that. You would just want to stay in, contact with the property owner to find out what the timeline is, and get permission to, go on the property to be able to document all sides of it. But sure.
And one more comment I wanted to make. I have, when working in Chicago, many years ago, I was involved in some HABs and HAIR documentation, which is, federally funded documentation of historic structures. And I suspect they're still around and have good examples of kind of, what is helpful to get on those drawings. And I just wonder if maybe, that could be something we think about too, just sort of supplying some guidance on those if we do want to kind of get some, adequate documentation.
This is Erin. I just wanted to jump in and say providing an example of what you guys are looking for with your drawing documentation does sound smart, particularly because, you could get a subpar, plan that would technically meet the conditions. I'm not sure that we're going to be getting HABs level drawings out of any of these guys. But I just wanted to add, a professional opinion from staff that I think requiring drawings in addition to photographs for this kind of documentation condition is always very smart.
Great. Well, thank you for that. Does anyone have any further comment? Okay, great. So yes, now we need a motion to adjourn. John Reese and Janine seconds. All in favor? Right. Carries unanimously. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.